Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Daffy's Roundtable. In today's episode, our guest is joining us all the way from Germany to talk about some of the coolest inverts that I personally have never heard of. My guest for today is Hannes from the Arthur podcast, and we talk all about his collection and all about true spiders and breeding them. Did you know that huntsmen are a type of true spider? I didn't. We talk about scorpions, and specifically, I'm going to butcher this, Euroscorpiones or European scorpions, and his experience working with them, his experience IDing them for the museum, and just breeding them in general. This is a super fascinating episode. I could not stop asking questions the entire time. I think you all are really going to enjoy it. But before we do that, allow me to thank Exo Terra for sponsoring this podcast and making this episode possible. Exo Terra makes quality products for our pet reptiles to make them feel at home. Okay, without further ado, everybody please help me welcome Hannes. Hannes, hello.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Joining us all the way from Germany. This is absolutely awesome. I'm super excited for today's episode. And as we said, we were saying before the episode, we've chatted quite a bit on Instagram. We've never actually spoken face to face. So I'm excited to finally do this. And before we get, and just so everyone knows, this is an invert episode. We will be speaking largely about scorpions, which is why I have the scorpion hat on. But before we do that, before we dive into your story, let's quickly talk about the hobby in Germany. So we were actually just briefly talking, you're near the Ham Expo, the reptile expo. Have you ever been to that?
Yes, of course. I think the first time was when I was around 11 or 12, and awesome. I've been to expos before that. So I think my first expo was when I was 6 or 7 years old, in my hometown, which is like 20 minutes away from Hamm, and it was a lot smaller. And the first time I went there, I was completely blown out of my mind because of the animals that I've seen there. In Hamm, you can get everything. You see animals that you only know from books that you read about. And for example, I think the coolest thing I saw there when I was there first, 10 years ago, there was an earless monitor, I think, from Borneo is the common name.
Yeah.
Yes. And stuff like that you don't see at your local pet store. And as a kid, I was completely blown away because my father and I went there, and after 3.5 hours, we just saw half of the building. And
it's that big.
Yeah, it's that big. It's the biggest show in the world, I think.
That's awesome. Yeah. Like in terms of like, I guess I don't know if you can even make it, if this question even makes sense, but like in terms of halls, is it like multiple giant halls? And is it separated by species, or is it just sort of different vendors everywhere?
No, it's everything in I think at least 3 halls, and the main hall it's really big. I don't have any good comparison, but
no, for sure.
Maybe like what sports do you play in Canada?
I was gonna say like bigger than a basketball court, or like something.
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
I think even bigger than a football court, not like the soccer football. The main hall is really big, and then there's an extra room for venomous snakes. So this room is like you can't go in there if you are under 18, and there are some medical service people standing in front of the room, and they can check IDs if you enter, but they never did it to me. And there are the venomous snakes. I don't know why the scorpions are not in this room, because there are some venomous scorpions too, but there's an extra room for venomous snakes, and everything else is just like mixed in together in the big hall. Okay. And then there's another, not really a hall, but it's more like a big tent, kind of half outside, half inside, and this is just for feeders. There's this like, it's I don't know, medium-sized room just for feeder supplies and cork and stuff like that.
Oh man, I have even more questions now. Okay, so that was actually one of the questions I was going to ask you, is if like including in that there was inverts, there is tarantulas, scorpions, all that kind of thing. I guess you sort of already answered it. Feeders wise, we're very limited over here, I guess. What kind of feed, like other than like crickets, superworms, mealworms? We're completely going off topic here, but this is just so interesting. What kind of stuff do you guys have?
three kinds of, or at least three species of crickets. I don't know the English common names.
Okay.
House crickets, like
Yeah.
these house crickets, and then one with spots on the pronotum. So after the head, they have two spots, and
Yeah.
then one, I think, Mediterranean crickets. The big black ones. So at least three species of crickets. A ton of roaches. I'm not a big fan of feeding roaches. We can talk about that later. Why?
Yeah.
But the normal dubias, the red runners, and a ton of different other roach species, because the roach hobby is a thing here too. So there are many people
Okay.
breeding roaches for fun, and in my opinion, this is more like the feeder stuff. There are some cool roach species. I kept the Pseudoglomerus magnifica ones, the emerald green roaches. They look really beautiful, and they are day active, and they would be too expensive to use as feeders. But I'm driving off topic here. But several kinds of roaches, superworms, mealworms, two species of locusts, the same you get over in Canada, I expect.
I don't know. We don't get those at all. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because of pest problems that might occur, or why?
I don't know. There's a whole bunch of different bylaws, and I think that's the biggest thing is like they're worried about like the agriculture, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
But I'm not too sure on why either, to be honest. But yeah, it's fascinating. Like we have one species of roach that's legal.
Okay.
I think it's just the house and the banded crickets that we have, and then it's like superworms, mealworms, silkworms, whatever.
And,
But
we also got a lot of small stuff because of the whole dart frog community here in Germany. Like two species, I assume you get them too. The two species of Drosophila, the fruit
yes,
fly.
that's the only thing we have pretty much.
Yeah. Then different species of springtails, a whole lot of different isopod species, but you get them too, I suspect.
Yeah, for sure.
And there are some insects. I even don't know the what they belong to. I think they are really, really small beetles. I think bean beetles, maybe.
Bean weevils or bean beetles or whatever they're called. Yeah.
Yes, and a few other stuff that's too niche to buy in the normal store, but you can get it if you have connections.
Right. Okay. So that's interesting. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so back to the hobby. And by the way, you just mentioned earlier going off topic. Go off topic as much as you want. This is sort of the point of this. Yeah. I go off topic all the time. Don't worry about it. But yeah. So then okay. So from terms of the inverts, bringing it back to that, is it as big of a hobby there as the reptile hobby? Because if you're 20 minutes away from Ham, I'm assuming the reptile hobby is quite big over there as well.
Yes, the reptile hobby is really big here in Germany, or in Central Europe in general. I think the biggest hobby countries are Germany, Poland, and the Czech Republic.
Awesome.
Because I don't know why exactly, but if there's a new species, doesn't matter if reptile, tarantula, scorpion, amphibians, stuff like that, you always see it by a breeder from this triangle of countries, and it appears here. I don't know why, but it seems to be like a good place to live if you enjoy the hobby. And the invert hobby, it's a lot smaller and a lot younger than the reptile hobby, because I think the big wave of starting to keep spiders and scorpions and stuff started only in the late 80s, early 90s. And over the last decade, it just got larger and larger. And now it's at a point, I think maybe they are the same size in like 1 or 2 years, but it's a bit smaller than the reptile hobby.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Awesome. Okay. So let's dive into your story. How did you get started in the hobby, and sort of what maybe up from there? What kind of species are you keeping now?
Well, I was always interested in animals in general, and especially in reptiles and amphibians. I don't know why and where that came from. Many people say that dinosaurs were their first interest, but for me it was just like lizards. And since I can think, it was there, and no one in my family was interested in that before. And I really don't know where it came from, but I always was that weird reptile kid.
Yeah,
And
natural fascination, absolutely.
yes, and I always spent my time going outdoors, turning over rotten logs to look for fire salamanders and newts and toads and stuff like that. And when I was in second grade, I finally talked my parents into getting leopard geckos.
Nice.
And yeah, when you go to reptile expos or to pet shops to get feeders, you see other animals you can buy, like stick insects or walking leaves, the different phasmids, mantids, stuff like that. And then I really got interested in phasmids. So yeah, I think you know phasmids, right? The
No,
stick
I was
insects.
gonna say, can you maybe break down what are phasmids for? I'm
Okay.
very like I don't know much about inverts. I will say that.
Okay,
So
phasmids are
yeah,
yeah, mainly stick and leaf mimicking insects. So
cool.
they look like there are tons of species, and I'm not really deep into them anymore. Around the time I was like 8 to 10, I was really into
Okay.
phasmids, but not anymore. And they look like sticks or leaves, and yeah, are easy
Yeah, I
to
think we
feed.
have a native species here in Canada.
Yeah, yeah, and they feed on not blackberry. Is it blackberry? The yeah, it's a kind of weed that grows at every place here in Germany, so you can feed them really easy, and they're easy to keep, easy to
Okay.
breed. You can handle them, so perfect, perfect pet for a kid. And by the time I was 10, I was breeding around 10, 15 different species of them just for fun and reading about them, and yeah, just enjoying the deep dive into a specific topic of animals. And then I got a bit bored because they only ate leaves, and then I got my first praying mantis when I was 11, 12, I think.
Nice.
And yeah, I kept some mantid species, but not really the hard ones or the rare ones, just the common stuff. Never bred them, just kept them. And then I got into beetles. A few years later, I got into beetles, different kind of flower beetles, stag beetles, rhino beetles, but nothing too rare, too expensive, too everything a kid could afford to buy. And then when I was, I think, 14, 15, I did an internship at the local zoo here in Dortmund. And it was just like a school internship. We had to work somewhere for 2 weeks, and we could pick the place. And I got lucky and had a place at the zoo. And there was this one guy in the break room, and another zookeeper told him, "Yeah, this kid, he's as crazy as you. He keeps stuff in terrariums like that." And
Yeah.
then yeah, we became friends, and it turned out he was like the local reptile spider keeper guy in our city, and
Awesome.
he worked at the zoo for 25 years in the tropic section with all the reptiles and stuff like that. And yeah, then I visited him in his basement, and he had like hundreds of tarantulas and reticulated python with a whole room as an enclosure and stuff like that. And I was blown
Wow.
away. And yeah, then I got my first tarantulas from him, and a week later I had 5 more, and a month later I had 20, and then I stopped counting. And
Yeah.
yeah, you know how it rolls.
For
But
sure.
then one day I thought, yeah, tarantulas, they are kind of cool, but I want to get more into the depth of the diversity of spiders, and there are more spiders than tarantulas. And then I
Sure.
got my first couple species of true spiders, and with that I learned to love them. How do you say it? I found my passion in these
Those
spiders.
things.
And
Yeah.
yeah, because I don't know if you know, but you can split spiders into mygalomorphe and araneomorphe. Mygalomorphe, excuse my German pronunciation here, but
That's okay.
mygalomorph spiders
You're
are
probably pronouncing it way better than we are.
mygalomorph spiders are evolutionary seen more old than the true spiders, and
Okay.
mygalomorph spiders are like tarantulas, trapdoor spiders, funnel web spiders, and a whole lot of more species. I can't think of the common name, but mygalomorph spiders have one characteristic, and that is that their chelicera, so their teeth, their fangs, if you will, they they work like this, like parallel.
Yeah.
What's it? They
Yeah,
work like
parallel, yeah.
parallel. And with every other spiders, like true spiders, they are like the much bigger group. Their fangs, they work like a tongue. They work like a scissor, like this.
Oh, okay, so like almost opposite each other. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yes,
maybe
yes.
not parallel, maybe like simultaneous, like oh yeah, okay. Both
Yeah,
going in the same direction versus both going towards each other, kind of thing. Yeah.
yes, yes. And
And what is the other one called?
uh,
You said something.
Araneomorphae.
Okay, that's the other type.
Our neomorph spiders, I think, the true
Okay.
spiders.
Okay, true
So
spiders. Yeah.
true spiders and megalomorph spiders. And then I got into true spiders, and especially into the Sparacidae. So this is the family of huntsman spiders.
Cool.
You may know there's some Australian pictures of the really
Yes.
big
Yes.
ones, or there are some other famous species from Southeast Asia, like the heteropoda David Bowie, named after David Bowie because it's bright orange, and the guy who described it is a huge David Bowie fan.
Okay.
And and those are the kind of spiders that most people in the tarantula hobby are not afraid of, but they say, oh, okay, I really like tarantulas, but this one that gives me the chills, and they're moving too fast, and the slings, so the babies are too tiny and stuff like that. But yeah, I saw a challenge in that, and I don't know, got into keeping and breeding different species of those. Also, another family, Ctenidae, the wandering spiders. You may have heard of the Brazilian wandering spider, the genus Phonoitria, which is one of the most venomous spiders in the world. And I also kept some species of this family. This was my turning point in the hobby, because then I started breeding stuff and having some rare species I could trade with others, and I was making a whole lot of new friends, and a whole lot of trading other species against each other. So yeah, that passion for true spiders that really helped me to grow in the hobby.
That's awesome. And just really quickly, that's what you're talking about.
Yep, the picture you pulled up is actually moved to a different family now. This is Copinius guitasi, and back in the day it was placed in Ctenidae, but now it's in Trechalidae. These are the fishing spiders now, but the other pictures are fine. These are Phonoitria.
Fascinating.
They are really famous for being aggressive and super deadly and stuff like that, but to be honest, I never saw one single threat pose of them, and I kept I kept and tried to breed Phonoitria boliviensis and Phonoitria nigriventa when it was still legal here in my state, and I raised them from teeny tiny hatchlings that were half of the size of a fruit fly to adults, and never saw a thing. And I never saw a single threat pose, and never was bitten or something like that. They are really, really chill if you don't disturb them. So
Yeah, well, that was gonna be my next question. So you said extremely venomous, or one of the most venomous spiders, and you okay. So how do you keep them? Are you keeping them the same as people keep tarantulas? Are they little like sling enclosures? Do you have to take more precautions because of how venomous they are?
That's actually a fun story, because the guy I got them from, he's a good friend, and I was always getting the huntsman spiders from him. And one day my dad drove me there because I was 15 at the time, or 16, I think. No, 16. And we sat on the sofa, and I got this heteropoda lunula from him. These are Malaysian huntsman spiders. And he said, yeah, I got something else for you here. And gave me like six little sling enclosures with teeny tiny dots in them. And he said, yeah, these are Phonoitria, try them, they are fun. And my dad and I were like, oh, we were treating these like they were radioactive, and didn't tell my mom about it for months. And I had them in a box, in another box.
Okay.
But after they got to a certain size, and after I gained more knowledge and learned to read the body language of this family of spiders, I kept them as as everything else. I mean,
Okay.
the enclosures are pretty how do we call it, proof, so they can't get out.
Yeah, like escape proof. Yeah.
It's like the glass door is falling down, or you keep them in boxes. Boxes are the most proof thing for inverts. And I tried to breed them once, but the female ate my only male.
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad it didn't work out, because then I had to separate like thousands of these, and
Yeah, so their numbers must be like, I know with tarantulas it's hundreds. With these guys, is it like thousands?
it's
Like you're
depending on the
saying?
species. Even with
Okay.
tarantulas, you can have species that have XX with like only 30 or 40 eggs in it. You have
Okay.
species with like 2,000, really depending on the species here. In general, with huntsman spiders or wandering spiders, I always had at least 300-400, maybe even 600-700, around that number.
Awesome.
Between
Okay.
300 and 700, I would say.
Let's break that down. Can you tell us a little bit about breeding, like the huntsman spiders? Is it the same process as tarantulas, or like how what do you have to do to kind of make it happen?
Yeah, it's more easy than people think. You just kind of
You just
need
pair
an
them.
adult male and an adult female, and the important thing is that the female lives in the enclosure for at least 1 week, I would say, because when huntsman spiders or spiders in general, when they move around at night, they always have little pieces of silk going out of their spinnerets and pulling up,
Yeah.
and these
So they're like almost constantly webbing.
not every time. Huntsman spiders do this to have like an emergency silk. If they have to drop down because a predator comes, they don't just fall. They have like this line of string that keeps them up.
Okay.
Some tarantulas or some funnel web spiders, they do it just because they wrap everything up and it's all white in there. But huntsman spiders, they don't build webs. They just roam around and have this little piece of string
Okay. Yeah.
behind them. And it
Hilarious.
also have another purpose when it comes to pairing them up. In females, the silk is scanned with pheromones. I don't know how scientifically correct is that, but it's scanned with something. And the males, when they notice there's a female in the area, because of the pheromones, they start drumming and twitching and stuff like that. And then the female knows, okay, it's not prey, it's a male.
It's a male.
And because of that, you have to keep the female in an enclosure for at least 1 or 2 weeks, so the male starts drumming and doesn't get eaten. Yeah, and then you throw the male in, just watch them. In the best case, you get the male out alive. In the worst case, which is the case in most of the times when you pair some heteropoda species, the male gets eaten. And then, you gotta wait until she builds the egg.
So cool. Okay, so and you said the male drums, so just like tarantulas, it kind of walks up to her, drums in front of her, and then they
it depends
I don't
on
even
the
know what the word
species.
is here. Yeah.
It depends on the species. They are really cool behaviors when it comes to that. For example, one genus of wandering spiders, Ankylometes is it called, they can dive and they live on water in the Amazon. And the males kind of tie up the females. They set them in a kind of trance. So the female is like
Can't move for a couple of hours.
she can't move. She's just
Yeah.
like this, and then the male ties her up with silk all over her legs. And when she tries to move again, he calms her down and then ties around, and then he does the thing. And
So how does she come out of the silk thing? Does he untie her?
It's not really tight. It's just like so she can't eat him in the second he does.
Okay. Yeah. That's so interesting. Okay, so how long does it take till you see I guess for her to build an egg sac, and then do you leave the egg sac in there, or are you pulling it out and raising the baby separately?
That's a big question. It depends, of course. No problem. But that's a big topic here in the hobby in general. If you pull XX or not. But
Okay.
I have a German podcast, and my first episode was just about this topic: to pull the XX or not to pull.
Not to pull.
And
Okay.
yeah, and the time, it depends on the temperature. With most species I bred yet of the families Parasidae and Ctenidae, it took around 4 to 6 weeks. In winter, 6 weeks. You have to know, I still live at my parents' home because I'm only 20 years old, and I keep everything in my own bedroom. So it's not a reptile room or something like that. It's really I can't have it at 28 degrees all the time here because I sleep in here.
Right. So you keep it at you keep all the species at room temperature. Then that's actually probably a good question to cover as well. Yeah.
And of course, I look that's not too cold, but in winter I would say it's around 22 degrees Celsius in here, and at night around 19. And even in the winter time, I had successful XX that hatched after. Oh, not that were built after 5 or 6 weeks, and then they took another 4 to 6 weeks to hatch, depending on the species and the condition of the egg. And with the genus Heteropoda, so these are huntsman spiders, it's really interesting because normally when you got a genus or a whole family, they always build the same kind of eggs.
Okay.
For example, tarantulas, there are many subfamilies and many genera of tarantulas, and there are only like 2 types of XX. And with Heteropoda, in this one genus, there are several types of XX. For example, Heteropoda lunula. If you want, I can write you that name because these are really beautiful. If you want to look them up.
Yeah, I can put it. Yeah.
Give me a second. I will write that name.
Are you texting it to me?
Yep. Okay. And these, for example, they glue the egg to a surface until it hatches, and they stay on the egg the whole time. So the egg is glued to a surface, and they stay on it the whole time. Heteropoda boae, for example, they.
These are gorgeous.
Yes, these are one of the most beautiful spiders out there.
So just my attempt at saying it, just for the people not watching, if you want to Google it, Heteropoda lunula.
Yes.
So this will be one of them. Am I right here?
Yes. Okay. These colors, they look kind of dull because maybe these are old animals, old pictures or something.
Oh, this is dull. Are they brighter than this? Wow.
Yes. These are the females. The males are nearly white. Yes, that's a good photo of them. Yeah, they are really beautiful.
Wow. How big are we? How big is this?
Leg span or body length? I know the American keepers, they always use leg span as size reference. In Europe, you just use the body length. I would say in leg span, they get around 12 to 14 centimeters, and body length around 3 centimeters.
Centimeters. So they're like this big.
No, just the body. With legs, they are like.
Okay. So I guess I guess they spread out.
Okay. Yeah. And with this species, my whole, if you want so, career in the hobby started because I was pretty successful breeding these, and could trade with other people for a lot of new species, or I could get some money for feeders, selling those to the online shops in Germany, Austria, Switzerland. Yeah.
I wonder if these are even available here. If something I very recently started getting into like the tarantulas and inverts, so I'm not too well versed with them, but I've only ever seen there's only 2 people here that I can think of that are keeping spiders that aren't tarantulas. I'm sure there's a lot more just off the top of my head. And I don't know if what they're keeping are, I wrote it down so I can try to remember, there's Myglomorph species or the true spiders ones. So I don't know. I don't even know if like the true spiders or anything that beautiful is even available here.
They are in the US hobby. I don't know about Canada. But but I think they should be in the Canadian hobby, but not as many as here in Europe. And even here in Europe, they started to vanish because many people didn't have success with raising these. I had like 5 XX of them and distributed them all over the hobby.
Okay.
And now some friends of mine are looking for males, but they can't find any. And I don't have them anymore because I shifted more into scorpions because I can work with them a bit more scientifically. And I shifted more into scorpions and all of that, and I don't have that many true spiders anymore. But these sadly got a bit rare here too.
I know what you mean. Sort of. Sometimes there's like these trends in the hobby with specific species where somebody, like you're saying, you bred 5 egg sacs, you distributed them, everyone had them, and then slowly they start dying off until one person kind of redoes that big boom again. But maybe let's jump back a couple of seconds before we dive into the scorpions, which I guess is what we're really here for. But you said different types of egg sacs, and then I slowly started Googling, and I wasn't like 100% sure if I heard you right. These types of spiders stick their egg sacs to something?
Yes, this particular species, Heteropoda lunula, they stick their egg sac to a surface like a vertical corkbark, and they guard it. They sit on it the whole time until it hatches. And for example, Heteropoda boae, which is related, it's the same genus. They start like that. They stick their egg sac to a vertical corkbark too. But after a few weeks, they start to carry it around. And a third species I bred, Heteropoda venatoria, they carry it around from the beginning. So it's really interesting to see.
They're carrying the cork bark around?
No, the egg sac, just the
egg sac. Okay. Okay.
So it's really interesting to see that diversity of different strategies of egg sac building and guarding, if you want, in this one genus. And this is just one genus. And that's so cool about true spiders. You have there are no limits regarding size, hunting strategy, coloration, form. There's a spider for everything.
That's really interesting. Okay, so sorry, I'm maybe sticking to this too long, but this is fascinating to me. So I'm assuming that if they're sticking them, or if they're guarding them, or they're doing one of the other forms of egg sacs, it's very hard or probably impossible to pull them in these terms, right? You have to let them raise them themselves.
It's a bit hard, but it should be done, because if you keep them in a normal enclosure with ventilation,
the babies will get out of the ventilation.
Yes, they are the size
of exactly where I was going with this.
Get out, and you don't want 500 huntsman spiders running around your house.
No, for sure.
Yes, and pulling the egg sac is sometimes easy, depending on the species, depending on the individual, because sometimes you have to really fight the female, and you would be surprised how strong a spider can pull. I mean, I have these normal
tug of war with a spider.
Yes. I have these normal-sized big tweezers many people use for snake feeding or stuff like that too. And I pulled the egg sac because you have to pull carefully so it don't rip up, but with a strength through. And the mom is pulling it back, and she's pulling the whole tweezer with my hand on it, and it's really cool. It's fun. Cool. It can be intimidating if you do it the first time, but after a while, it's just fun. Yeah. Then I incubated the egg sac in a self-made incubator. I just fill up one of these 5-liter boxes with
I can make this vermifull. There we go.
Yes, one of these 5-liter boxes with moist substrate like sand or it's not just clay, but the stuff you use as drainage in rainforest enclosures.
Okay, like hydro balls or leca balls or whatever.
Yes, stuff like that. And then you put the egg sac in a smaller box with dry paper towel. And it's important that the egg sac lays on dry paper towel, but the air humidity is really high. And with that, you can incubate many species of spiders. I had success with different families, and yeah, works good, and it's way less work than separating them if they already hatched in the mom's enclosure.
Yeah, I'm sure. And then once they do hatch, you have to separate every single baby into a different enclosure.
You don't have to, because you don't need 400 slings or stuff like
Right.
that. I when I
You let some of
started,
them eat each other.
yes, of course, because then
Yeah.
you can. I made the observation that if you separate the whole exec directly, the percentage of specimens that die is much higher if you just keep them in groups and separate them after 2 weeks or 6 weeks or something like that. So it's really beneficial for them to grow up in groups, because you have stronger and faster growing and larger individuals if you raise them in groups, and then you don't have the problem of hundreds of slings. And
Yeah.
it can be really time intensive to feed them, because at some point you have to separate them, because in a box like this, if you put in 40 huntsman slings that are fruit fly size, after a month or after 2 months there only will be 10 or 5 left of them. So
Yeah.
you have to separate them, and it can be really time intensive to feed a couple of hundreds, maybe even 1,000 slings in these small enclosures, and have to drop one fruit fly in each. And I was lucky, after I finished school, I had a bit of free time before I started studying biology. And in this free time, I could just focus on breeding and selling stuff and stuff like that. And now I shifted to scorpions, because scorpions are a lot easier to work with. The clutches are small numbers. They can't run fast. They can't run up glass or something like that. So I shifted more into the scorpions because of the easiness.
Awesome. Okay, so maybe we'll also shift into the scorpions. Haha. So okay, so you mentioned earlier something about you can also work with the scorpions more scientifically as well. What do you mean by that?
I'm really interested in one subfamily of scorpions that is called Euscorpiinae. So when you look at the name Euscorpius, for example, which is one genus in this family, you can see Scorpius, it kind of means European scorpion.
Okay.
And these little scorpions of this subfamily, they are distributed not really all over Europe, but in the southern parts of Europe. And the northernmost species, they even occur in Austria or Switzerland in the Alps. And when you think of scorpions, what do you think of? You think of South Africa,
Yeah,
maybe
deserts, hot.
Asia.
Yeah.
Yes. But even in the Alps, for example, are scorpions. And there are over 90 species in the subfamily, and 4 different genera. And I really started to look into them just out of fun, because I kept some species. And for example, when friends of mine or hobby friends of mine were on holiday in Croatia, they said, Scorpius tegustinus are like under every stone. They are in the apartment here. If you want, I can bring you some of them.
Wow.
And then the collection started, and I started to read papers, and I really wanted to know more about the ecology of them, because the only stuff I could find was taxonomic stuff, which is really interesting too. But I really wanted to look into the ecology more, because there's an Euscorpius or Alpiscorpius for every niche. There are some species that live in the mountains in northern Italy or Austria. There are species that only live in one cave in Greece. There are species that need it more dry. There are species that really need the humidity. And really started to dig into that. And then I was on the Spider Expo in Weinstadt. So this expo in Germany is just for spiders. I think it's mainly tarantulas, sadly, but or unfortunately, but it's the whole arachnid community is there. And there's this one guy. Dr. Peter Jäger, or just Peter, and he's a famous German archaeologist, and he described over 400, 500 new species, and he's really a really cool guy when it comes to spiders. I have to get a bit more specific. I have to take a deep dive in this story to explain how I got into
Yeah,
it.
no, go ahead. This is fascinating. Yeah.
So when I was 14 or 15, I wrote Peter an email because I had a question about a spider he described. And then we emailed back and forth, and I asked him, how do you went from studying biology to be an arachnologist? And he said, yeah, it's too complicated to talk about that in email. Just phone me, and gave me his phone number. And then we talked on the phone, and then he said at the end of the phone call, if you want, you can visit me at my office here in the Senckenberg Museum in Frankfurt in Germany. And yeah, I was very happy about that, and my father and I drove down there, and we were in this office of Peter. And you have to know, this guy, he discovered the largest spider species of the planet, the Heteropoda maxima, with a leg span of over 30 centimeters. And as a kid, I watched the documentation where he went into the caves in Laos and found this spider. And when I was sitting in his office, he had like this spider he collected on television. He had this spider framed up behind his desk. And the spider I saw as a little kid on television was just there in the office by the guy who described
full circle.
Yes. And
that's
that was
crazy.
So cool. And Peter is such a cool and fun and really nice guy. And he's always empowering young people with their passion. And then in years later in the Weinstadt Expo, we already became friends over the years. We talked about Euscorpius, and he said, yeah, Hannes, I know you are pretty into these European scorpions. We have the whole collection from our museum here, but there aren't any, they are not identified. Can you do that for us? And I was, because this was an opportunity to work taxonomically with the genus which I like the most, and I read all the papers before, and I was always doing this hobby taxonomy on them. When I got an undescribed species from anyone, I was looking under the binoculars, counting the hairs and comparing it in papers. And
wow.
So now I have the opportunity to ID the whole collection of this subfamily for one of the largest natural history museums in Europe, and one of the oldest. And this is really cool. I feel really honored by that. It's not that complicated as you may think, and not that hard. I just compare papers and have a not microscope but binocular at home, and just counting Trichobotrya. So
but binoculars, like the ones I think you do mean
I show you. It's
microscope.
It looks like a microscope, but a microscope, at least in German, we have a different word for it, because microscope, it's like it's it shows the cells and really, really, really small stuff.
Right. Okay.
Binocular is, I know binoculars are these in English, but binocular in German, it means like microscope that's not that deep. I mean, you can see
not as strong.
Yes. And and then I looked more into taxonomic papers, and now I think I know most of these papers on Euscorpius and Alpiscorpius and all that other stuff that are published. And I always get sent by friends when there's a new paper on these published. And I have one particular friend, shout out to Mario at this place. He's my age, and we just randomly met over Instagram, and he is as much into these really niche scorpions as I am. And he is
awesome.
and he's also he would be a really good guest for you, because his father was a director of herpetology in a zoo in Croatia, and they keep all kinds of monitors at their home. They have a huge experience with field herping and monitors and all that stuff. So I can, if you want, I can send you his Instagram profile later.
Yeah, if you can get us in contact, that'd be awesome for sure.
And because of him, I always have a friend to talk about these weird little scorpions from Europe, and we are always reading papers and comparing field data that we self-collected in Italy or Greece or stuff like that. And we always trade offspring and stuff like that. And the peak of the whole Oiscorpius thing was that Peter, so the science guy, invited me to the arachnological symposium this year in Frankfurt. And he was a few weeks earlier, he was here in Germany, in my city, because he was filmed for a spider documentary. And we went out drinking, and a few beers deep into the drinking, he talked me into having a scientific presentation at this arachnological symposium. And I said yes, because I was drunk.
And, no, that's awesome.
And I had to help the presentation, and there were people with real titles like Doctor something, and they had really good presentations, and I was just showing the taxonomy and distribution of these different Oiscorpius species, and it was just like phone pics from my last holiday in Italy and stuff like that. But it turned out to be really funny, and a lot of people liked it because it was the only scorpion presentation in the spider world. But that's what I mean by more scientifically. I mean, I don't paid for it, and it's not like my job, but it's hobby science. Yeah, hobby science is a good word for it. For example, I found out something with Mario that, at my knowledge, no one saw before. We found out that you can identify the groups if you look at the babies on the mother's back in the first insta, because on certain groups they have certain colors that other groups don't have, and taxonomically everyone just looks at the dead adult specimens, but nobody looks into the whole life cycle and the ecology of that, and that's what interests me the most. Sorry for diving too deep in, maybe, or talking too long, but
no, not at all. No, that's also I'm actually gonna make you talk about it longer. This is super interesting. Okay, so maybe actually, first of all, why don't you give the museum that you're doing this for a shout out as well, if you want? I don't know, like if it matters, or where you.
The Senckenberg Museum in Frankfurt, and especially shout out to Peter Jäger. Thank you for this great opportunity. This is really cool.
That's awesome. Okay, so you went from doing only I'm gonna butcher this, only doing the Euroscorpina genus, and now you're basically doing everything in all the scorpions in the museum.
No, just this subfamily. I'm just
okay.
This is just. I mean, I know some other scorpion taxonomy too, but this is my focus. I keep and breed around 20 species of this subfamily. So this back in the day, everything in this subfamily was Oiscorpius, one genus, and I think in Birula, this was one guy from France, I think, or something like that. In 1917, he said, maybe that's not all one genus. It's Alpiscorpius and Polytrichobotrius and Tetratrichobotrius too. But everyone said, no, this is just subgenus level. And then when the whole genetic research thing popped up in 1999, I think the first subgenus was elevated to genus level, and now they are splitting them all up. Back in the day, there were like 10 species. Now there are 90 species.
Wow. Okay, so before we talk about the ones you're keeping and breeding them and all that kind of stuff, why don't you give me one or two species names for me to look up as well, just so we can kind of see what they look like, or two of the more common ones, or two of the prettier ones, or whatever, up to you. Just kind of get a general idea of how different they look from the scorpions that we're used to seeing.
Okay, they are really small, and the problem is because of the whole taxonomic revision. If you Google a name, it's usually always out of the pool of the 30 pictures of that one species that pops up. So it's
hard to see which one or what it would look like, or what.
Maybe I will write you some names, and maybe later, if you want, I can send you more pictures on WhatsApp or stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Oiscorpius. I will just send you some genus names first. but they nearly all look the same. If you don't know, if you're not into scorpions, they all look the same. They're all brownish, blackish, and some of them have yellow legs. Some of them have more
And
grayish legs, and I mean, you can ID them with counting the hairs on the pedipalps. So it's
is that the only difference between them?
no, there are many stuff plays into that. You have to look at geography. You have to look at the history of the geography. Like, was there a river like 10,000 years ago in this area? You have to look at the hairs are the main criteria. The hairs on the pedipalps, the
Yep.
pinches, the hairs on that are the main thing, and the hairs on the patella. The patella is the one part of the arm, and you count those hairs, and then scorpions have pectinal teeth. These are on the ventral side, on the bottom side of the scorpion, and with these teeth in question marks is they use it to smell prey or a female or a male, and by counting those pectinal teeth, the hairs, the coloration, the granulation on the body segments, the geography, the genetics. By those 6 things are the main taxonomic stuff, and you have all merged it together, and then you can ID them.
Yeah, and you're doing this obviously on like not live specimens, correct?
Yes, it's pretty hard with live specimens.
Yeah.
Because, you can do it, but not on a really. I mean, if you have like only 2 species that can be it, you can do it on a live specimen. But if you have, for example, something from Italy and you don't know what it is and where it's from exactly, it's really hard, because alone in Italy there are 28 species of them. And so when they are alive, you can I don't know, do you have these cricket boxes in Canada?
Yeah, we have something similar. Yeah.
Yes, and you can
critter keepers or stuff like that. Yeah.
You can put the scorpion in, put another box on top, turn it around, and then you can count the hairs on the bottom side, the trichobotria. The hairs that I mean are not normal hairs that the scorpion has. It also has some normal hairs, but these are trichobotria or trichobotria in English, and these are hairs that can sense air movement. And the placement, so the number of these hairs and the placement of them, that's what's important. And the bad thing is that it can even vary in one species. So you have to look at 10 specimens of one species of one location to say, okay, I'm sure that is this species or that species. You can't just look at one scorpion and say, oh, okay, that's Euscorpius erymanticus, because the hairs are kind of fitting. You have to look at a bunch of specimens, and that is way easier with dead specimens in alcohol.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I've pulled up this guy over here. Does that look?
Yeah, that's what most. That's a cool species, Euscorpius candiota. That's actually the first scorpion species I found in the wild. That species is endemic to the island of Crete in Greece, and really cool species. They are more yellowish. I mean, they can vary too. Some of them are darker. Some of them are more yellowish, and I think most of the pictures are not even this species, but they are more yellowish, and cool species. I will never forget that. I found them on my first trip to a country which has scorpions, or to a warmer country in general. When I was a kid, I always made vacation in the Netherlands and in Austria, and even though there are some scorpion species in Austria, they are more in the southeast, and I was never there. I was just used to not finding herbs or scorpions or stuff like that in general on my holiday. And last year I went to Crete with my father, and after 3 days of turning around stones and finding nothing, really nothing, one day we hiked up to to a kind of waterfall, and it was in the mid of summer, and everything was completely dry. That's why I didn't found anything in the first days. But at this waterfall, there was like a really, really small forest, and the first rock I turned around there was one female of Euscorpius candiota, and that moment, that was kind of a turning point in my life, I think, when I found this scorpion, this animal I only knew from my terrariums, I only knew from books. I found it in the wild, and it occurs there normally, and this was one of the greatest moments in my whole herping going outdoor life.
I'm sure that's absolutely awesome for sure. And then okay, so this picture here is gonna bring me to my next question and probably to your collection of breeding.
Oh, that is
Do
from Mark Stockmann. Yeah, he's a really good scorpion breeder.
okay, cool. Who sorry? Oh, I guess you recognize the name of the bottom. Okay, cool. Yeah. So this is obviously a scorpion with babies on its back. For those of you not watching, only listening. The first question I have is: do all scorpions breed like this? Is this just
Yes,
how they have their baby?
yes,
Okay, so they always will have the babies on the back.
yeah.
Okay, can you? I'll get rid of this. Can you break down? Are first of all the species you're currently keeping? You said you're keeping something around 20 species. Are they all from that same
Yes,
Euroscorpia?
I keep around 20 species of that subfamily, and then I keep some other species of other families too. So in total, I'd say I have, yeah, not as much as last year, but I think around 30, maybe 35 species of scorpions here.
Awesome. Okay, and then so can you maybe walk us through the breeding process, how you pair them, that kind of stuff?
With many scorpions, females can save the sperm
Retain sperm.
for
Yes.
retain
Yeah.
sperm for a long time. And with this particular subfamily I'm working with, Euscorpiinae, if you get any wild caught ones of them, they give birth, I would say, at a 90% rate. So the wild caught ones, they are always paired up already, and they're gonna drop a clutch one time in a year. And with other species or stuff that's not wild caught and you raise it, you just it's like the same with the spiders. The female has to be in the enclosure for it doesn't has to be. It's not that important as with spiders, but it's beneficial when the female is living in this enclosure for like 1 week or a few days, because then when you drop the male in, his pectines on his bottom half, they go from this, like this, and he scans the female scans, and then he, with, for example, Euscorpius, he starts ticking with his tail and walking up to the female, and then he grabs the female with his pedipalps, with his tongues, I don't know.
Pinchers, tongues. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they start to do this mating dance. Can take 5 minutes, can take 5 hours,
Wow.
depending on the species, depending on the individual. And then that's where the interesting part happens. The male searches for a surface that is hard enough for him to place his spermatophore. A spermatophore is a mix of chitin. Is that the right English word? Chitin, the stuff that's around bugs' exoskeleton, is made of that.
Okay. Chitin.
Yes,
Chitin.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
chitin. And a spermatophore is made of chitin, and it has a sperm drop at the end, and the male lays it on the ground. So the spermatophore, made out of chitin and sperm, is standing up like that, and then he pulls the female over it.
Okay,
And in the same move where he pulls it, something gets triggered, and the sperm is in the female, and then the mating is over. Then they leave, and the mating is over. And with scorpions, the interesting thing is that they can really take a long time to give birth. For example, these small species, or scorpions, they drop a clutch like one time a year, I would say, and they depending on the species, I heard of other cases too, but yeah, mostly they take around 9 to 12 months to drop a clutch.
After pairing.
After pairing, yes.
Wow.
And they always can cancel the pregnancy if you want. So if the conditions are not right, if they're not getting enough food, which is never the case in scorpions because they can live without food for months and be fine. But if it's too dry, if it's too cold, they can just cancel the whole gravity thing, not gravity, pregnancy thing.
Like being
And
gravid. Yeah.
yes, and yeah. But if everything is all right with Oescorpius, you have babies like after a year with other species from other families. For example, Babicurus jacksoni, they only take 3 or 4 months, I think. So depending on the species, it's
different. Yeah. And so how does it work? So are they like this might sound so stupid. Are they just coming out of the back, or is she laying them and putting them on her back, or like?
Oh, when you turn the scorpion around, you have in the upper part of the body, you find these 2 pectines I talked about earlier, and between those pectines or these pectinal teeth, I will write it so you can Google it and have a better picture.
Sure. Yeah. That's not a bad idea. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And between these 2 pectine teeth, you can see like the opening where the babies come out and where the sperm comes in, and the babies are birthed out of that opening. And some species of scorpions, they form like a little basket with their first pair of legs, and the babies can then crawl from the legs on her back. And yes, that picture maybe, just pick one, yeah. And there you can see the pectines, and in the middle of the pectine teeth, you can see the opening where the babies come out.
Okay, so it's not like those frogs where they're like laid on their backs. Or
I think Pipa is the species.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, and the babies come out there, and then the babies are what we call in the hobby is first insta. So in first insta, they don't eat anything. They can't really move. They are more fat and clumsy, and they kind of look like a real scorpion, but they are much cuter, much more round.
They look like glow in the dark toys.
Yes. And when they molt in Insta2 with many species, they leave then. For example, Oescorpius, after 9, now depending on the species, after 7 to 10 days, everybody molted from Insta1 into Insta2, and the day they molt in Insta2, they are leaving their mom. Okay. Other species maybe stay on their mom even if they are Insta3, so one molt further. Some species they stay on the mom for a bit longer, and the time they're staying on the mom's back is really depending on the species, on the genus, on the family. You can't say that for all. And even with some species, you may know it, the emperor scorpion, the Pandinus imperator.
Yes, that's one of the ones we have here. That's one of the ones you see in the hobby frequently here.
Yes, the big ones from Africa. And there are records of clutches living with their mom together for years in the wild. So when people are looking for ball pythons or stuff like that in Africa, they dig up some burrows, and often you find like one big female and different sized smaller scorpions that are maybe months, maybe years old, living in their mom's burrow too, with that particular species. And pretty interesting, because when you think of arachnids, you don't think about carrying moms, but for example, when a scorpion drops off her back, she gently takes it with her pinches and put it back up, and it's so cool to see.
Do you separate them at the second instar once they leave the mom for the species
Um,
you work with?
mm, as always, depending on the species, for Scorpius, I'm kind of trying out some different methods now, because raising Scorpius, I mean, keeping and breeding them, really easy. Raising them from Insta 2 to adulthood, a bit harder,
A little harder. Okay. Yeah.
because they I think this is the whole European climate thing, because they need it kind of moist, but not too moist, and I think a brumation is really beneficial for them. So in winter, I put everything in the basement, and yeah. But I think with many species, it's better to separate them. Other species need to be kept in groups first. For example, I had Lucia scutilus. These are Butidae from Thailand, and I think the English name is Thailand bark scorpion. And I had a clutch of these, and when they left their mom, I separated them, and everything out of that clutch died in a matter of 4 weeks.
Wow.
And the next clutch, I put in the whole clutch of 18 animals. I put them in a box which was full of cork. I mean, like 20 pieces of cork bark over there. They much hiding spaces, much food in there, but all the 18 little scorpions, they were sitting on one pile under one cork bark until they molted into Insta 3. And when they were Insta 3, they kind of started separating each other and went to different heights. And then I separated them, and then I had great success with raising them. But I don't know why, but when they first left their mother in Insta 2, they kind of needed that one
together.
pile of each other. Yeah, I don't know why, but yeah, that's the kind of stuff you learn from mistakes. So
For sure. I wonder if it's like a stress thing, if they feel less stressed when there's a bunch of them together rather than if they're on their own, they just immediately stress. I not that I would know. That's super interesting. You just mentioned you move them to the basement for brumation.
yeah.
Can you talk about the brumation process a little bit? So do you leave them alone? Are you still feeding them over that? How cold does the basement get? Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the winter temperature. I'm sorry if I don't, if I always say it depends. It depends.
No,
biology. It depends always.
Always, no, for sure. And you're working with so many different, like, we're not just talking about like, it's everything is different. So many different like little subspecies or species or whatever. Anyway, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, and the basement is around, I would say, 8 to 12 degrees, more like 12. Yeah, depending on the winter. If it's like -10 outside, it's more like 8 degrees. But when it's over zero, it's around 12 to 15 degrees.
So how cold are you going before you're like, this is too cold?
With Euscorpius, doesn't matter, I would say, because okay. If you look at Euscorpius candiota, for example, from Crete, it doesn't really get that cold on Crete. I mean, it gets cold in the winter, but only like maybe 5, 8, 10 degrees. But if you look at the species from the Alps in Austria or Switzerland, they easily have below zero with snow and everything. So that doesn't matter. I made an interesting observation with the alpine species. I have Alpiscorpius germanus and Alpiscorpius alpha. And back in the day, they were counted as one species, and then they were split because on one side of a river in Austria, you only find, in Italy, you only find germanus, and on the other side of the river, you only find alpha. And they are separated by the river, but the habitats are the same. The climate is pretty much the same. And the germanus, they were really inactive. They were just sitting around, brumating and not looking for food. They were just sitting around and were not moving at all in the basement. And the alpha, this a bit smaller species, but from nearly the same climate, same habitat, they were moving around like crazy. They were doing better than in the summer in my room. So
they prefer
still experimenting with that. And if you keep them solitary in the basement in small containers, I would say feeding them is not always that necessary when you have some isopods in there. I have isopods in nearly every enclosure I have, just because of the cleaning is much easier.
Yeah.
And Scorpios, they love isopods in nature. They primarily feed on isopods and stuff like that. So you can always keep some in there. And with solitary housed animals, it's not so important to feed them over the brumation. But with groups, if you have like bigger groups of them, I currently trying stuff out to keep them in like these big boxes, 50, 60 liters. The bottom is filled with substrate and leaf litter for the small ones to hide, and then I just put in a whole pile of stones, like you would find them in the nature, and then I put them different sized animals, like one male, three females, one or two juveniles, and the whole clutch of E2 slings. And if you do that and put them in the basement, I would say you have to throw some crickets in every 2 weeks, I would say.
Yeah, just so they don't start eating each other, kind of thing.
Yeah, and the Scorpios really like to eat each other. Doesn't matter how good you feed them and how long it went good together, but at some point, if you forget to feed for some weeks, they normally wouldn't starve, but they just go around looking for food, and they find a smaller or even a same size individual, and they eat it.
Yeah.
Some species of Scorpios can be kept together better than other species, but I would, for breeding and raising and stuff, I would more recommend solitary housing.
Yeah. Are they more of a, it's because they come from Europe, so I guess I don't know, are they more of like they prefer higher humidity, cooler temperatures rather than like some of the scorpions that are like, yes, people are keeping desert, like sort of heat and sand and nothing else? Yeah. Okay.
Definitely. It's always depending on the species, of course, but
for sure,
in general, they need higher humidity. I keep Euridae too. This is another family from Europe, but it's more like in Greece, and then it starts in Turkey too. So far east, southeast Europe, and these are the biggest scorpions we can find here in Europe, with lengths up to 10 centimeters or even a bit more, I think. And they like it a bit more humid and colder too, but it's difficult to explain for me in English right now. But the stones they are hiding under, it's humid under the stones, but the general habitat, it's not so humid. It's not completely desert dry, but it's more arid than under the stone. And that's the important thing when it comes to inverts. You have to look at the microclimates. Yeah. I mean, that's the important thing with reptiles too. But the most classic thing is people see something comes from Africa and they already assume, oh, okay, it's a desert species because Africa is just full of deserts and savannas. But we have to consider that the animals we keep in captivity here, they sometimes live under stones that are bigger than the whole enclosure.
That we're putting them in, right?
Yeah, it's sometimes hard to mimic that exact humidity, but over the years you get a feeling for that, and then it's nicer. But back to your question, the most of the European scorpions, they are more humid living. There are some more arid ones. For example, the genus Aegeobutos, as the name says, they occur in the Aegean Sea in Greece and Turkey, and they live in the habitats where the Scorpios and the Euros don't live, more the sandy dunes, the more drier, more hotter habitats. Sometimes you find them overlapping, but there's a scorpion for every habitat in southern Europe.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are there any communal species of scorpion?
Yes, there are. Titius stigmurus, for example, is the most classic one. These are also parthenogenic, so you just it's like morning geckos. You just start with like 3, and over a few years you have a big colony. There are many scorpions that you can keep together. They are not really communally because they don't interact with each other, but they don't mind. So you can often keep them together. If you feed them enough, they really don't don't bother each other and sometimes sit under the same log. I saw that behavior more into the family of Butide. But I have to say I never keep the classic arid ones. I mean, the classic hobby scorpions, if it's not like the black humid living ones, it's always the Androctonus, Leurus, and the high potent venom desert stuff. I never kept those because I focus more on the humid and cooler living species because the desert ones, they don't do good in my bedroom. It's maybe too humid because of all the humid enclosures, and it's not hot enough, and that's why I never have experience with the desert species. So I can't talk about that. But many species of this family, Butida, the humid living species of this family, they don't bother each other so much. You can raise them together, you can keep them together as adults. I think when you have offspring and you have them in all together in a big enclosure, sometimes the adult ones, they will pick on the smaller ones, but yeah, they are more communally than the European ones or the Oescorpius.
Right. And then you said when you mentioned Titurus, you mentioned it being super potent. Is that more potent than like the average European one?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, the Oescorpius, for example, they can't even get through your skin all the time. So they they don't really try to sting you. I mean, when I was in Greece or Italy, I caught them with my hand, or when I have to do something here, I normally just pick them up and they don't do anything. Some species are more feisty than others, and that's quite funny because when a scorpion is like this big and like stinging around, it's pretty funny to watch. But yeah, the Titius, they are more potent. I once kept Titius smeaty back when it was legal in my state, and they really were angry when you not angry. Angry is the wrong word for describing an animal. They were more defensive.
Yeah.
They were totally crazy about food. When you throw a few crickets in, they had like one cricket in their mouth, one cricket in their right pincher, one in their left, and they were still going for a fourth one.
Going for it, yeah.
When you pick up the cork bark with your tweezer, they always got straight into defense pose, and yeah, like the scorpion on your cap, it's in defense pose. It has the stinger right up and is ready to sting.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I actually kept Titurus, not Smithy, the Sigmurus. Yeah, for a brief period, but it also didn't really work out with my room temperatures and stuff here. So I no longer have that scorpion. It was the only scorpion I ever kept. But one day I do think I would like to get into the scorpion hobby. It's super fascinating for sure. You'll have to send me some European scorpions up here.
Yeah, maybe that's possible one day. I think there are one or two guys in Germany that do big exports. I once shipped Oescorpius to China, but that was just because I knew the guy, and he was a friend of a friend who has all the legal permits and stuff, so that worked out. And yeah, I think you don't have any US Scorpios or the whole European Scorpions in the American or the Canadian hobby.
I don't think we do.
Yeah, and you're missing out on the big ones. I mean, Scorpios, maybe they are boring, maybe not. Every avid Scorpion keeper always blames the Scorpios for being boring and just brown and small, but I really love them. But the big European ones like Eurus, Meta-Eurus, Proto-Eurus, all that stuff, they are really cool. They are that big. You can see them at the evening climbing around the rock structures, and they look so cool, and they are so calm. They are
we don't see those.
Pretty chill, and
yeah. No, we don't see those at all. But awesome. Okay, so Hannes, I think that was absolutely incredible. There was so much awesome information in there. Yeah, man. Thank you very much for coming on, for doing this. This was a fascinating episode for sure. Can you let everyone know where they can find you, keep up with you, and for if there is any listeners that do speak German, let them know what the podcast name is as well.
Okay. So the podcast name is Arthro Podcast, like arthropod and then podcast. Okay. And my Instagram name is der_Arthro_. Spinner. I think you should just write it in the caption.
Yes, it will
It's
definitely be
actually
in the show notes or somewhere. Yeah.
it's actually a German play of words, because a Spinner is like a crazy person, and Spinne is spider. So it's like a play of words, like crazy for spiders.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, man, thank you very much for coming on and doing this. I think I'm going to be spending the rest of the day. I shouldn't be, because I have a lot of other things to do, but I think I'm going to be spending the rest of the day looking up scorpions and true spiders. I took a bunch of notes down while you were talking, because I have all these things to look up now. But yeah, man, once again, that was awesome. Thank you very much. And for everyone listening, thank you very much for listening. Go give Hannes a follow. Go check out the podcast. And yeah, thank you for watching. We will see you on the next one.